In tonight's Dorchester segment, we'll hear an update about plans for a school relocation, along with some changing plans for transforming industrial properties into housing. To tell us about that is the news editor for the Dorchester Reporter, Jennifer Smith. Thank you much for being with us, Jen.
Of course, Chris.
I want to start with the plans for the McCormick Middle School, one part of a much bigger plan for the whole city. Students there, they are very worried about being sent somewhere else. Why is that?
So the basic plan for the city is to phase out middle schools entirely and basically transition the entire city to either K-6 or 7-12 schools. It's part of this kind of long-term plan to basically streamline the school system, find out where there's excess spending, and basically work to make it work more efficiently for everyone. For the McCormick, one thing that came up in a recent school committee proposal is that it would actually be changed from an elementary school to a 7-12 school after the 2019 to 2020 school year wrapped up. It would be closed, remodeled, reopened like that, and the student body temporarily would go over to the South Boston Excel School. So that actually met with a lot of concern from the McCormick school area because, of course, you rely on the local elementary schools to basically take elementary school children. And they also didn't feel that they were consulted adequately when they were talking about what's the best approach for this school. So you have some other, for instance, middle schools that were suggesting maybe we should transition to K-6 schools, maybe use part of the McCormick for swing space for some of the students while renovations were happening. But BTU president, Boston Teachers Union president Jessica Tang, said that fundamentally their issue is that the proposal to change the McCormick and close it and transform it just kind of came out of nowhere.
Well, I think from the school department, the story is the current building does need a lot of work, and the McCormick, I think they're lagging a bit on enrollment. So I guess if something has to go, why not them?
Yeah, so I think the big question for the school community is, as you mentioned, as part of the Build BPS assessment of all of these school facilities, the school does need improvement and it does need renovation, and there's only about 400 students that attend it. So I don't think there's any disagreement that the school itself needs some adjustment. But again, especially given the pretty rapid changeover as far as BPS leadership as a whole, one of the big points of concern is we know something needs to be done with this school, but why did you just decide that the best approach was a closure? And why didn't you really consult with not only the school community, but teachers, for instance, there. And so one of the teachers that our reporter Dan Sheehan, who wrote the story for our website, did actually talk to, she basically said there's some concern that they're kind of dealing with Dorchester schools in this very haphazard way, where the McCormick does deserve to have better facilities. The school community deserves to make sure that students and teachers are in good functional school buildings, but they should definitely be consulted about the actual way that they're set up.
This has been the news. We're talking with Jennifer Smith from the Dorchester Reporter. Jennifer, more housing as usual, but
always.
Dot Block is a very big project, dramatically transforming some former industrial land near Dot Ave and Freeport Street. And I guess the developers, they're being pressed to make some changes. What about these?
Yeah, so just kind of for background, in the Glover's Corner area of Dorchester, around the Hancock Street area, there's about 4 acres of land that has now been demolished, finally, that's being planned for this large mixed-use development with a combination of residential units, retail units, and sort of a pass-through to better connect the region with the Dorchester Avenue area. And we saw some change toward the end of last year when the Hong Kong billionaire Gerald Chan, who obviously is familiar for his name being on a lot of the Harvard area's campus, the Chan School of Health, he bought up the Dot Block site, which had already been this ongoing project for a few years, and came on as the primary investor last year. That seems to have come with a plan to change some things. The Boston Planning and Development Agency and spokespeople for the development say those changes aren't going to be major, but it might have something to do with improving the pass-through of the actual project. This might mean a through street. It might mean rearranging some of the retail spaces, and probably some changes to the actual design materials on it. So at any rate, the latest word on that one is they plan on coming back to the community at some point before winter kicks in to say, these are the changes, this is what's going on, this is our improved timeline or updated timeline, and really just kind of brief them on it again. Now, this is interesting because this is, of course, not Gerald Chan's only holding in the area. It's in the middle of the Glover's Corner planning study area for right along the Dorchester Avenue corridor. And he bought over the past year or so the Russell Engineering site and the Spire printing site. And so there's still a lot of question over what he wants to do with that at all. But for now, they seem to be focusing on dot block.
Well, this location is very close to Savin Hill Station, so a lot of people living in that housing are going to take the T probably. But, you know, some of them are going to use cars, and this intersection, Glover's Corner, I mean, already it's another one of those choke points, isn't it?
It really is, and I think that's why the planning study is a really interesting backdrop for it, where I went along on some of the walkthroughs that the planners were doing, and one of the first things that people in the neighborhood said is, you have to do something about this intersection. It's madness already, and you're going to be dropping in new units, you're going to be dropping in new parking spaces. What's to be done here? So it remains to be seen to what extent Gerald Chan and those development folks are actually engaging with the city to try and work with any redesigns that might happen around that intersection. And again, as you noted, it's near the Savin Hill T-stop. It's pretty much equidistant between Savin Hill and the Fields Corner stop. So I think a lot of the idea behind the Glover's Corner study is actually creating incentive for people to walk between them, where now a lot of people choose to drive because, again, it's so industrial.
Turning to another topic here, National Grid. Last time you're talking about how they were setting back some housing developments. There was a hearing in the City Council chambers about the safety of the natural gas infrastructure. What about National Grid? Do they have anything to say?
Well, we don't know. They didn't show up. And that did not go unremarked upon by Councillor Matt O'Malley, who actually chaired the meeting, and of course, Councillors Ayanna Presley and Ed Flynn. There is this kind of sense that a lot of people in the city have. Of course, we have one of the oldest natural gas systems in the entire country, and because of this ongoing strike, again, National Grid was in communication with its workers over contract negotiations. They weren't able to reach an agreement quite a while ago, so this summer they decided that instead of keeping the workers on, about 1,200 of them, instead of keeping them on to kind of get existing work done, they were going to lock them out. So there's about 1,200 workers who can't really do their jobs coming into the winter. So the purpose of this hearing was basically to say, how is this lockout impacting the work that needs to be done? Is National Grid holding up basically the standards that we need to be expecting from it? And it seems to have had some impact. Since last year, the actual rate of repairs is down 50 to 80% in the city of Boston. So the lockout seems to be having a pretty significant impact, and there's a lot of concern that there could be leaks, there could be explosions that result from the lack of workers being able to make these repairs.
One other sad story: the Vietnam Veterans Memorial. This was built about 30 years ago with a lot of community support, and it was vandalized. Talk about that.
Yeah, so this is this big, beautiful granite monument off Morrissey Boulevard, and toward the end of October, what it looks like is someone threw bricks, or someone or multiple people threw bricks at the actual stone structure, and then took a chainsaw to the shrubberies nearby. There was one of the American flags was torn down and vandalized as well. And the police are still looking into who would have done this, but it's thousands and thousands of dollars of damage that was done to this memorial, which of course honors around 80 residents of Dorchester who lost their lives in the Vietnam War. And so the folks who worked on actually getting the memorial set up have started a GoFundMe that's online. They're trying to raise about $25,000 to bring it back up to its former glory. They're at about 11,000 already, so there's been a real outpouring of community support, but again, it's pretty much left people at a loss of who would do this.
Jen, we won't be seeing you for a while after the election, but immediately after the voting, you're going to have something on a podcast, right?
Yeah, so I'm the co-host of a podcast called The Horse Race alongside Steve Koczela of Mass Inc. where it's basically breaking down Massachusetts political elections, races, intrigue of the sort. And we're going to be having at the WeWork, 1 Beacon Street, from 6 to 8 p.m. Immediately after the election, we're basically going to be doing a post-mortem on what surprised us, what didn't surprise us, and we're going to be hearing from City Councilor Michelle Wu, the likely next Suffolk County District Attorney Rachel Rollins, and the campaign manager for the Baker-Polito campaign. So that'll kind of be a chance for everyone to relax, have some beers, have some snacks, and listen to some of the kind of clarion voices of Massachusetts politics really break down what happened.
Okay, one time again, where and when this is going to be, if people want to go?
Yeah, so this is going to be at the WeWork 1 Beacon from 6 to 8 p.m. on Wednesday, November 7th. So it's the day after the election, and it's free.
And in the meantime, your Twitter feed and the Reporter, if people want to see that?
Yeah, if we want to stick to Dorchester news, we've got the website, .news.com. You can follow the paper at Twitter at .news and me at jen.smith.
Thank you very much for being with us. Jennifer Smith
Thanks, Chris.
from the Dorchester Reporter.